Well, joining us now, Adam Marshall, Director of Policy at the British Chamber of Commerce, and rail expert Christian Wolmar. Good to see both of you. So, Adam, we know that you love the idea of this. Why does the country need to spend £32 billion on this?
Well, fundamentally, it's about capacity, capacity, capacity.
It's
not
what?
really an argument about speed. Our railways are running out of space, and if we don't have some radical moves like this project, what we're going to see is fares getting higher, overcrowding getting worse, more commuters not getting to their jobs, freight not getting where it needs to go. So this would be a radical break. It would stop the process of make, do and mend, which has characterised the way we handle our infrastructure here in this country for so long.
If capacity is the issue, why is the focus on speed? It is high-speed rail, and a lot is being made, as we saw in that piece, of the fact that it's going to take 49 minutes to get to Birmingham as opposed to something just over an hour.
Well, I think speed is an important benefit, but capacity is the biggest one. What we wouldn't do is walk into an electronics shop and buy a television set, say, that we knew was going to be obsolete from the beginning. We'd buy the best possible one we could. Here, too, we need to get the best possible railway we can for this country, rather than patching up what we've already got.
Christian, that sounds very reasonable, doesn't it?
Well, I'm afraid I'm very sceptical of this project, although I'm a great fan of the railways. I write books about them and so on. But I see this as, you know, one of these grands projets that the French like so much. You know, let's pile all this money into one little line.
The French railway network, everybody says, is great, though.
Well, there's bits of the French network that are great, but there's other bits that aren't so great, partly because, precisely, they've spent all their money on their high-speed network. Now, we're a much smaller country than France. We don't need this kind of special high-speed trains, this new network. We need to improve the existing trains. We need to invest in them. And by pouring all this money into this one project, all the rest of the rail network is going to get neglected.
Is that not a fair point? Because some would say it's a bit of a vanity project, and as Christian points out, we're not the size of a France or a Japan that have better rail services. So where else could we spend £32 billion over the next 14 years to make it better?
Before we talk about £32 billion, let's talk about the last time we tried to upgrade our existing railway lines. We have something called the West Coast Main Line, of course, which cost £9 billion just to upgrade. It was like putting a sticking plaster onto the problem. We keep putting sticking plasters on our problems here in the UK, whether it's on the railways, on the roads, or with our airports. And ultimately, over time, what's happening is our competitiveness is eroding, right? We're going to lose jobs, we're going to lose growth in the long term because investment's going to go elsewhere.
But, you know, that's what's going to happen on the rest of the rail network. We're going to have to patch it up, you know, improve the capacity there by all sorts of measures. You know, why single out this one line that's going to have all this investment, which will absolutely take away all the investment for the rest of the railway? Don't believe the politicians who say, oh, this is going to be additional. It's not. It's actually going to be focus all the attention on one line, and it's not going to open until 2026.
Well, let's look at what's happening now, Christian. We've got Crossrail being built in London for tens of billions of pounds. We've got electrification of lines going out to Bristol and up to the Midlands. We've got a huge number of rail projects going on. We're always going to have conventional rail projects. But if we don't make a radical break and build a really big amounts of capacity, overcrowding is going to get worse, fares are going to get worse. We're never going to solve the problem, and we're never going to get to the point where we can look at our railway system with pride.
But this won't necessarily solve the problem. You know, it's only one line to one city and maybe a couple of cities later on. And that's the real problem with it. It's actually going to make people drive to, you know, these 2 or 3 stations that's going to be on this particular line. And the rest of the network is going to have fewer trains as a result of that.
And also, for those people that object on environmental reasons, either because they live near the proposed new link and they want to have the trains charging past them very quickly, or because they just care about the countryside in those areas, they're not happy with this at all.
No, well, sorry, go on, yeah.
I've never seen more environmental mitigation. I've never seen anyone pay more attention to some of the consequences of these lines than the designers that have been putting a huge amount of effort into this over the past few years. Remember, huge efforts have been undertaken to try to deal with the environmental issues. I know that the government, if it doesn't make its announcement today, is going to be keen to deal with those environmental issues as well. What you're not seeing is a project that hasn't had that kind of close attention.
But in fact, you know, there's no great environmental advantage. You know, a government will portray this as saying it will take people out of the sky and so on. It's not true, actually. The assessment of this on environmental grounds found that it was pretty much carbon neutral. In other words, there's no great environmental advantage. You can't spend £17 billion on a project these days and not have some environmental advantage.
We should point out this isn't going ahead just yet. There may be some objections in Parliament today. We'll learn more later on, though. Thanks very much indeed for coming in.